Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name's Brittnee. Today I am going to show you my new airbrush. So if you are new to airbrushing or perhaps looking to buy a new one, this video is for you. I'm going to go over all the parts and extra parts for my airbrush, along with all of the other supplies and equipment I use with the airbrush in order to spray cocoa butter for chocolate bonbon mold decorating. I'm also going to play around with the airbrush settings and show you how adjusting those will affect your spray. And then I will do a sample design with cocoa butter on a chocolate mold and show you the final result. So let's get started. First, I'll go over all of the supplies that I'll be using today. And just a reminder, I always link all of the supplies in the description box down below. So here are all the things that I'll be using today. Let's start off with my specific airbrush. I have the Grex tritium.tg, if that's how you say it. I think it's tritium, not sure. And I purchased this airbrush in the kit, so I'll show you what came with it. I purchased the 0.7mm nozzle set, and so the kit came with one fan spray cap, which was already attached to the airbrush gun itself. A micro fan spray cap, a round spray cap, a 1/2 ounce metal cup with a lid, a 4 ounce plastic cup with a lid, the hose attachment with an airflow dial, a 10-foot braided hose, and this handy carrying case. So in this kit, you can choose between the 0.7mm, 0.5, or 0.3 needle size and nozzles. And you can also buy more than one size and interchange them if you'd like. Also, if you already have an airbrush or you're looking to buy one and it's not this one, don't worry, this video will still be helpful for you. Most airbrushes work pretty much the same. And one other thing, if you're looking to get started on spraying chocolate designs, I definitely recommend buying an airbrush first over a spray gun. I made this mistake and bought a spray gun first, but the benefit of buying an airbrush is it can pretty much do the same thing that a spray gun can. You can cover a lot of molds with just an airbrush, and an airbrush uses a lot less air. So you'll be able to buy a smaller, more quiet compressor and also cheaper. And it's just a lot more realistic for at-home use. So if you're just spraying like a couple molds, getting started, I would definitely go with an airbrush over a spray gun. Oh, and one other thing I purchased from Grex that didn't come with the kit is the airbrush holder. And I'm so glad that I bought this because it has been super useful, so I highly recommend it. The Fortress Ultra Quiet Compressor, which is 1 gallon, goes up to 135 PSI and it's 0.5 HP. A moisture filter, which is really important, as you all know, because any type of moisture can really mess with our tempered cocoa butter. The Cake Safe Master Spray Booth, size professional. And I have a review video on this product. If you want to check it out, just click this card or find the link in the description. And don't forget, I also have a coupon code to Cake Safe, which is Brittnee K, and it will get you 10% off. A mask with filters to protect the old lungs, some cocoa butters for spraying. The colors I'll be using today are Chef Rubber pre-colored cocoa butters, French fuchsia, and some Princess Pink mixed with some alabaster white to lighten it up. A heat gun for tempering the cocoa butter, but also for keeping it warm in the airbrush as I spray. My new favorite thermometer, Thermapen 1, for accurate cocoa butter tempering. I just realized everything's pink today. The filters, the thermometer, the cocoa butter. A polycarbonate chocolate mold. I'm just using a classic half sphere today. I'll link the exact one down below, so in case you're curious. And then some other basic supplies that are always useful, like a bunch of paper towels, parchment paper, plastic cups with a lid for mixing your cocoa butters, and I really like to also use these straight mini metal spatulas. Now I'm going to show you this Grex Tritium airbrush in detail, the best that I can. Now keep in mind that I am no airbrush expert by any means, but so far I have gotten great results with this airbrush. Now really quick, before I break down all the parts to the airbrush, I'll show you how to set it up with your compressor. Okay, so first you'll just grab your cord, and this end is what hooks to the compressor. So we'll just find the other end. And then in the kit, you'll grab the little piece that has the air pressure dial on it. Carefully grab the airbrush from this end. And I find that it's easier to screw this piece onto the airbrush first, because this has a nice rotating piece here that screws on. So the dial is on the lower end, and you just twist it onto the airbrush. Make sure it's tight right here so that no air will leak. And then with this end, you can just screw it on like this. Once again, make sure that's tight, and then this piece can rotate, but the screw stays tight. So if you see it rotate, you can move it to where it's comfortable when you're spraying. And then something I don't think I mentioned yet is that this is the airbrush I have is a top gravity fed. So the cup screws onto the top like this, whether you're using the metal or the plastic one. They also have this same model with the side gravity fed, and the cup would just sit right here instead. And usually on the side ones, you can rotate the cup like this, which some people prefer because then you can spray at different angles without the cup tipping and having a possible spill or getting the lid messy underneath. So that's a personal preference thing. I like this one. I feel like you can still spray at different angles just fine. And most of the time you're spraying at like a specific angle anyway. So for me, that's just fine. Anyway, so once you've got this piece connected to the airbrush, you're going to take the other end over to your compressor. Now you'll have your moisture filter attached. You just attach it by opening that up and pulling it back and tightening it. And then you'll take your hose, push this down, slip it in, and then make sure it's locked up. And then you can't tell the pressure right now until I turn it on. And then this dial is what adjusts the pressure. I'll show you what happens when I turn it on, but I'll wait till I'm done talking. And yeah, you'll adjust it with this dial. So I'll show you that now. To turn it on, I flip this switch. And the instructions for this airbrush say that the operating pressure is 5 to 80 PSI. So 80 is where I'll set it now to start, and really you won't need to go above that. So there are 6 things that you can adjust as you're spraying to shake up the results that you're getting. Number 1 is the air pressure or PSI on your compressor, which I basically just showed you how to do. I think that between 30 to 80 PSI is a great range to play around with for cocoa butter. You can test out different PSIs in between there and see what your preference is depending on what you're going for. Generally, the higher the PSI, the smoother and finer the spray pattern will be. Number 2 is the airflow on your airbrush. So along with the PSI setting on your compressor, you can control the airflow by using this dial. And the settings are, if you turn it all the way to the right, you'll see there's a little symbol here that gets small to big and it says max. So if you turn it to the right on the small end, there's also a 0 here. If you turn it tight, no pressure will come out when you push the button. And then the more to the left or counterclockwise you turn it, the more air and air pressure it's going to let in. So even though you can have whatever PSI, you can also turn the air pressure off or all the way up to max using this dial. And in general, this setting also affects your spray in the same way that the PSI setting does, but you'll notice the combination of the two together can be adjusted in different ways and it'll still give you different results. So they're both useful to know and you can play around with them. Number 3 is the paint flow. So there are kind of two ways that you can control the paint flow. Essentially, what is opening up the paint to come down and spray is the setting of the needle. And the way you control that is with this back dial. So if you open it up like to here, for example, when you pull the trigger, this is basically controlling how far back the needle goes. So if you have it like all the way open like this, when you pull the trigger, the needle goes back farther, which will let out more paint because the needle is farther from the tip and the paint will flow out of the hole. If you close this a little bit more, say to like here, your trigger won't pull back as much, which means the needle won't pull back as much, which means less paint will flow out. Okay? And you can also close this like this. And this is only air. So the other thing I want to talk about is that this is a double action trigger, which means when you press the trigger, when you first pull it, it's just air. And then when you pull it from here to here, it lets out paint. Obviously right now I don't have anything in there, so you're not going to be able to tell. But yeah, so that's how it works. First air, and then air and cocoa butter. So if you close this, just air, and it stops you. It stops the trigger. The further back you turn this, the further back the second action will go. So air, paint. So that's one way to control it. Like if there's an amount of paint that you find works well for you, having this half closed, having it almost all the way closed, or having it all the way open, and that makes it easy for you to just always pull it all the way, that's one way to control it. And then the second way to control it is to always keep it as open as you can and control it with the trigger instead. So you could, in one spray, go from light to heavy paint flow just by using your finger. So you could pull a little paint like this, medium, or a lot, all using your finger. For me, if there's something you prefer, it's just kind of easier to set this so that you're getting consistent results and you don't rely on your finger, you know, because you can accidentally go too far or not enough. So number 4 is the needle adjustment. And similar to number 3, which was paint flow, adjusting the needle can help you change some things as well. So how you adjust the needle: first take off this back screw, then you can unscrew this part that looks like the end of a pen, kind of. And then you'll want to unscrew this little piece. And you always want to be super careful when taking out your needle, because if you damage your needle or like bend it, it will affect the spray pattern. It can get wonky. And as you can see, I have some pink cocoa butter in here. I'm going to just clean it by going like that. And that's how you can clean it if things are getting gunked up. I mean, my airbrush is basically cool right now, so obviously the cocoa butter that's in there is set up. But yeah, you can clean it like that. But when I say needle adjustment, something you can do, so you carefully put it in, and you basically want to push it really carefully till it comes all the way out of the hole. And normally you press it all the way in. But something you can do to adjust it, to let more paint out and get a different pattern, is pull it back just a little bit and then put the screw on. If ever you're finding like not enough paint's coming out, or you know, or if you just want to play around with the results, you can pull it back just a little bit. Okay, and then screw it tight and screw everything on. For now, I'm going to push it all the way out and put it back together. Number 5 is swapping out the airbrush nozzles, of course. This one's kind of obvious. So like I mentioned before, I have a 0.7 millimeter fan cap that came on the airbrush. I also have a micro fan cap and a round cap. The fan caps can be turned horizontal, like it is right now, or vertical like this. So to do that with this larger one, you just loosen this front screw, turn it vertical, and then tighten it. And then to change it to horizontal, you just do the same thing. To switch out from the 0.7 fan, you actually have to take off the tip. And there are 3 pieces. So the fan, the screw, and then this piece that changes the size of the front nozzle. And then to put on the round one, and the round one is actually magnetic, which is nice. So you need to put on this other smaller front piece, and this is made to hold the smaller pieces. So carefully screw it on without hitting the needle. So now this is fit to use the micro or the round, and it's just magnetic like that. So then to get your micro fan, you just pop the round off, and oh, this is so small. Pop on the micro fan. And then once again, this is how it looks on vertical. And to go horizontal, you just twist it. And it's really easy with this one because it's magnetic. And then you can also mess around with spraying without any of the nozzles by just having it like that. And number 6 is how close or far you spray. And this is pretty self-explanatory. How close or far you spray and how that affects the spray pattern is basically close gives you a more narrow and more dense spray pattern, and pulling the airbrush farther away gives you a wider and less dense spray pattern. So I'm going to do a bunch of test sprays for you guys, making different combinations of those 6 adjustments to show you what some of those different combinations look like. Of course, there are way too many different combinations to actually test out for you in this video, but I'll cover quite a few to give you a good idea of exactly how the changes will change the spray result. But before I can play around with all the settings, I have to temper my cocoa butter. If you don't know how to temper cocoa butter yet, I have a video on that on my channel where you can learn. Just click this card or find the link down in the description. And for airbrushing, after my cocoa butter is tempered, I like to warm it up to the higher end of the working temperature range. I usually warm it up to around 31 degrees. So that it stays warm in the airbrush longer and it also stays more fluid. Just be sure not to take it above 32 degrees, this is all Celsius, or you can take your cocoa butter out of temper, and that is not a good thing. Also, while we're on the topic of cocoa butter, as you know, cocoa butter doesn't just stay tempered. As you're working, it will cool down and start setting up. Just sitting at room temperature will make it cool down and set up, but it cools down especially when it's in the airbrush because of the compressed air. So as you're working with your cocoa butter in the airbrush, you have to also work to keep the cocoa butter warm and fluid. And to do that, you use your heat gun. And along with that, something else to keep in mind is which cup you're going to use. Remember, there's 2 cups that come in the kit, the small metal one and the larger plastic one. Now you can also buy a larger metal one separate if you'd like, if you prefer the metal over the plastic, but they work a little differently. So metal is a good conductor of heat, while plastic is a good insulator. So the metal cup is easier to adjust the temperature. That means at room temperature, it cools down quicker and it warms up faster with the heat gun. The plastic cup will maintain its starting temperature longer and cool down slower at room temperature, but it's also slower to warm up and transfer heat to the cocoa butter using the heat gun. The other thing to keep in mind is the size. So the more cocoa butter you start with, the longer it will stay in temperature, because when you have a greater amount of cocoa butter to start with, it cools down a lot slower. So these really aren't that even, but if you had the large metal cup, you could decide, would I rather be able to transfer heat quicker or have it stay at its starting temperature longer? I prefer the large plastic one because it can hold more, but also because it's more consistent in temperature. Oh, and one more thing about the metal one. If you decide you prefer it, you just have to be careful, because it can transfer heat a lot quicker, that you can accidentally get it too warm. So you run the risk of taking your cocoa butter out of temper, and you don't want that. So because constantly moving the camera around is a bit of a hassle, I'm going to show you before I start what I do to keep the airbrush warm in between spraying. And I would say I do this with the heat gun probably every 3 to 5 minutes in between sprays. So you'll see that when I test, I'm going to spray a full sheet of parchment paper with different settings. And I probably warm up the heat gun in between each of those test sprays. But basically what I do is I go up and down like twice on the airbrush and then on the tip to make sure everything stays warm and isn't setting up in the airbrush. So I'll just show you what I do. The goal is basically to just keep the environment around the airbrush warm and keep your cocoa butter in temper. So yeah, that's how you keep the cocoa butter warm inside the airbrush. All right, so my cocoa butter is tempered. I'm going to use the plastic cup. Along with warming this up in between uses, you want to warm up the airbrush, because last time I used it with cocoa butter, there will be set up cocoa butter inside. So I want to warm that up so that it melts and sprays out when I get this going. And I also want to warm up the cup so it's not too cold when I pour the tempered cocoa butter in. So I'll do that really quick. Now for the first use, I'm getting it warmer than I would in between uses. In between sprays, you're just trying to keep it warm, but right now I need to melt what's in there. So I'm getting it a little bit more warm than I would in between sprays, just FYI. Okay. The cup is warm, the airbrush is pretty warm too. You can test the airflow a little. It does have air coming out, so I will put the cocoa butter in. Okay, so I'm just going to carefully pour it right into the cup. Make sure the cup's screwed on tight. And I'm going to put in as much as I can, because that'll help it stay in temper longer. And then match up the notches and screw on the lid. Okay, now we're going to have some fun spraying this really bright pink cocoa butter. And because things are going to be loud and I'm already going to be juggling the airbrush, keeping the cocoa butter warm with the heat gun, and changing all these settings, I can't also deal with moving the camera around once it's set up. So that means I won't be able to easily show you what adjustments I'm making on the airbrush as I'm making them. So what I'll do is for each test spray, I'll add text on the screen of what settings I'm using. And so before I get spraying, I will quickly show you how each setting label corresponds to the setting on the airbrush. So the first label that I'll use is for the airflow. I'll set the airbrush to either low, which is like 1/2 to 3/4 of a spin, or I'll set it to max, which is all the way open. Next, I'll use paint flow, and just to simplify things, for my test, I will always pull the trigger all the way back. But remember, you can adjust the paint flow pretty easily using the trigger by not pulling it all the way back, but using the settings will help me show you more consistently because it's setting the max amount for me that I can spray. So I'll use the labels low, medium, or high. Low will be if you close this all the way and then open it about 1/8 of an inch, that will be low. Medium will be about 1/4 of an inch open. And then high will be if you unscrew it until you start to see this piece where it dents back in and gets narrower. I'm going to line up this edge with the end of the airbrush. And that's what I mean when I say high. And then next, of course, I'll tell you which nozzle I'm using. So that will either be the 0.7mm fan, and I'll tell you if it's horizontal or vertical, and then if it's the round one, or if I'm using the micro fan, horizontal or vertical. And then with each test spray, I won't label this, but you'll be able to tell whether I'm close or far. And then I'll probably also do some tests where I pull the needle and adjust it just a little further back. And then also one test where I spray without any of the nozzle caps on. Now, after watching me try out all of those setting combinations, I think you'll notice the same trend that I did, and that is that the higher the pressure, the smoother the spray pattern will be. The higher the paint flow, the denser the spray pattern will be. Also, when spraying further away, the high pressure and the high paint flow give a more seamless pattern with smaller dots of cocoa butter, while less pressure and less paint give a more speckly pattern. So you also probably noticed that when I lowered the PSI on the compressor to 30 and also used the low air pressure setting on the valve, I was able to get a speckled dot or splatter pattern, which I like a lot and I think is really fun. But a lot of times you just want a nice smooth coat, and if that's the case, you're better off using a higher PSI like 80 and then adjusting the airflow and paint depending on how thick or thin you need your paint coat to be, along with how far away you'll be spraying. Now I'm going to spray an actual chocolate mold for you guys, and for this I'll use 2 different spray patterns, and then I will show you how I like to clean the airbrush and the cup in between colors, and then I'll also show you how I clean it after I'm done spraying for the day. For the chocolate mold design, I'm going for a nice smooth fade from dark pink to light pink. So for the dark pink settings, I'm going to use 80 PSI. I'll be using the micro fan nozzle, and I'll use it horizontally, but I found in the testing, you can't really tell the difference what way it's turned, so it doesn't really matter, but that's the tip I'm going to be using. And then I'll be using medium paint flow and probably almost max airflow. All right, so here's how I clean this in between colors. First, I warmed it up one last time with the heat gun to make sure everything's fluid. I will pour the extra cocoa butter back into its container first. And then I have this nice like long spatula. So then I just try to get as much cocoa butter out of the cup as I can so that I don't waste any. So that does a pretty good job, as you can see. It's kind of not possible to get all of it, but just get what you can. And then same with the lid. I'm just going to kind of dump as much out from there as I can. At least what has pooled on the top, like that. Then I'll unscrew the cup. And if there's any in here, dump that out. And then now, take another paper towel, and I have it on 80 psi, and then I'm going to turn this pressure up as well and just spray out as much as I can. Basically, I just spray till it's clear. Nothing really is coming out. Okay. Then clean whatever's a little bit dirty. Going to switch the nozzle because I'll be changing it out anyway. Very carefully cleaning the needle just by dabbing it and the seam where the screw goes. And then, well, first I'll do the cup. I'm just going to stick the paper towel in like this. So between colors, I'm basically just cleaning everything dry, like with a paper towel, and I'm getting as much color out of everything as possible, but I don't want to clean with soap and water because I'm trying to use the airbrush right away, and I can't run the risk of not being able to dry everything all the way before adding cocoa butter. So I'm just getting most of it. And it's fine because once you put the second color in and spray out everything from the airbrush, it will be, there won't be enough cocoa butter to mix. So just kind of rolling a paper towel and sticking it up there. And then I'll do the other thing from this side. Kind of stick it down in there and press it to wipe out as much as I can. And because I'm using a light pink after this, even though this is a darker pink, like even if it mixes a little, it won't matter. The only thing I would say is if you're doing white backgrounds, I would maybe do it on a different day, completely clean out the cup, or use a different cup if you have two. And yeah, because white will show some mixture, possibly. So I would just recommend that, like, if you're doing a white background, to plan it for a different day so that you can do the full cleaning with soap and water for the cup, and then give your airbrush like an even better cleaning maybe. I don't know, it just depends. You should be fine. I've used white or lighter colors after darker colors without cleaning the airbrush like 100%, but sometimes if you, like I did the experiment where I pulled the needle back a little bit, which it puts more paint out, and sometimes too much paint, but that's how you get the cool like splatter effect. But doing that can kind of make your airbrush a mess on the inside. So like it might not be worth it to you to do that. You can also do splatter with like a toothbrush and other techniques, but so anyway, it does kind of make a mess. So just know that. Okay, for this, I'm not going to worry about getting all of that because it's not going to be possible, but I'm not going to be like tipping my cup upside down and mixing it, so I should be fine. And Now I just do the same thing as best I can with the airbrush. I'm mostly just going to roll up this paper towel and gently clean inside the cup. Like, I'm not pressing too hard, just enough to like get the walls and get any extra going on in there. There's a little paint escaped into here, so okay. So that's pretty good. I'll turn the pressure up again. Oh, it's already up. I'll turn the pressure, and yeah, like no pink, no dark pink is spraying out at this point. So that's ready for our next color. Now for the background color, which is light pink, I want to cover a lot of ground because I am going to be covering the whole mold in light pink, even backing the darker pink, just so that it's a nice smooth fade into the light pink. And I want the cocoa butter droplets to be super fine so that it gives a nice smooth coverage overall. So I will be using 80 psi, the 0.7 millimeter fan nozzle, and I'll be using that horizontally so that it sprays vertically and I can go from side to side. And then same thing, I'll use medium paint flow and max airflow. So my light pink is tempered and I've warmed it up to 31 degrees Celsius. I'm going to prepare the airbrush the same as I did before. I'm going to warm up the gun and the cup and then transfer the cocoa butter into it. Okay, and we're ready to go. Okay, so the first part of cleaning this for the day is similar to when switching colors. So okay, and really that's all I do for the airbrush. The next color I put in, I just basically, it's the same as I did with the other transition. I spray it, make sure nothing, like the pink isn't coming out, and whatever color I put in next will just push out the rest and then it will be fine. And then same thing with the cup. Going to get out off as much as I can because the cocoa butter, you don't want a ton of it going into your sink. Now to the sink. Okay, so basically I have my cup and lid, and then I'm going to wash all of my tips but I'm going to put this in front of the drain, just like a little towel, so that I don't accidentally drop them. And I like to line them up so I know that I have all the pieces. Okay, so first I get my water really, really hot. Going to warm up my cup. And I like to use a cup cleaner for the cup. I just spin it around in here, go on the outside. And then I get some of these straw cleaners. I put soap and I go in the hole as well, like this. Rinse it all off. And it's basically like new. And then I just set it here on a clean towel to dry. Same thing with the lid. And with this one, you can take this top piece off. And somehow cocoa butter gets in there. So I have a straw cleaner that I folded. And I just stick it in there. And that's all clean. And I do the same thing with the lid. If you have really hot water and you just use the brush to kind of go in circles, you'll get it all. So this is like pretty much brand new as well. Set it to the side. Okay, make sure my drain is blocked good. And I'm going to first warm up these pieces with hot water. And then just use my straw cleaner to get in there. On the outside, through the middle, like this. And they get clean really fast. It's really easy. So then I just set it to the side to dry. And then once I'm done cleaning everything, I don't know if these will rust or anything or get weird, but I just like to run, like first I just tap the water out of the crevices. So I just tip them each like way. And then I just like to run over all of this with the heat gun to kind of help it dry faster. And that's just what I do. And if I do like the full-on water and soap wash, I let these sit overnight just to make sure they're completely dry before I ever put cocoa butter back into them. And that's it. Now I'm just going to quickly mold the shells using white chocolate. And because this is a test design, I'm not filling these, so I'm going to unmold them now just as shells, and we'll see how they turn out. All right, guys, I hope that you enjoyed today's video and that you learned something new. Comment down below what your experience is so far using airbrush techniques to decorate chocolate molds. And if you liked this video, if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, today's the day. If you'd like to see something else that's sweet, just click on one of these thumbnails. Thanks so much for watching today, and I'll see you soon. Bye.